The Silent Return. The crystalline spires of Velora Prime gleamed under the twin suns as millions gathered for the centennial celebration. Admiral Kelthus stood at the grand podium, his iridescent wings catching the light as he addressed the vast assembly of Velorans. Their species had evolved from avian ancestors, and their feathered forms filled the sky above the capital city in a spectacular display of unity. 100 years ago, we made the difficult decision that saved our civilization, Kelthus proclaimed, his voice carrying across the neural network that connected every citizen. The humans posed an existential threat to galactic harmony. Their aggressive expansion, their refusal to join the collective, and their dangerous technology left us no choice. The crowd pulsed with approval, their bioluminescent patches flickering in synchronized patterns. Young Velorans, barely fledged, listened with wide eyes as their elders recounted stories of the Great Purification. They had been taught that humans were monsters, creatures of chaos who built weapons instead of art, who conquered instead of cooperated. Today, we celebrate not just our survival, but the peace that followed. Kelthus continued. No more human warships patrol our borders. No more human colonies threaten our trade routes. The galaxy is finally safe. As fireworks erupted overhead, painting the sky with cascading colors that only Veloran eyes could fully appreciate, something stirred in the darkness between stars. Far from any inhabited system, in a region of space long considered dead, sensors that had remained dormant for decades suddenly activated. Deep in the Void Nebula, where radiation and gravitational anomalies made navigation nearly impossible, a massive structure came to life. The Ark Prometheus, humanity's greatest achievement and last hope, began its final system checks. Inside its armored hull, 300,000 humans prepared for their return to known space. Captain Elena Vasquez stood on the bridge, her weathered hands steady on the command console. At 58 years old, she had been born aboard the Ark, as had her parents before her. She had never breathed natural air or felt real sunlight on her skin, but she carried the memories of Earth in her DNA, in the stories passed down through generations. All sections report ready, Captain, announced Lieutenant Marcus Chen, his fingers dancing across the holographic interface. The cloaking field held perfectly. They never knew we were here. Elena nodded, her gray eyes reflecting the star charts that surrounded them. For a century, humanity had hidden in the one place their enemies would never look, inside a nebula so hostile that conventional ships couldn't survive. But humans had always been adaptable, and desperation had driven them to achieve the impossible. Dr. Singh, status on Project Echo? Elena asked, turning to the chief scientist. Dr. Amara Singh looked up from her quantum calculations, pushing her glasses up her nose, a gesture that had survived even in an age of perfect vision correction. The gravitational resonators are online. When we activate them, every world in the Veloran collective will feel it. They won't be able to ignore us this time. Elena studied the faces of her bridge crew. They were young, most of them third or fourth generation Ark-born. They had never known Earth, had never seen the blue oceans or green forests that existed now only in their archives. But they carry humanity's spirit, that stubborn refusal to surrender, that burning need to survive against all odds. Send the message to all section leaders, Elena commanded. Operation Phoenix begins in 6 hours. As the Ark Prometheus prepared for its emergence, the first anomalies began appearing in Veloran space. Patrol ships reported strange energy fluctuations at the edge of their territory. Mining stations detected unusual gravitational waves. Communication beacons picked up encrypted signals that their computers couldn't decode. Admiral Thexar, commander of Veloran Border Security, reviewed the reports with growing unease. His feathers ruffled involuntarily as he studied the data patterns. Something was happening, something his people's advanced technology couldn't explain. These readings are similar to the signatures we detected before the human elimination, his science officer reported. But that's impossible. We confirmed the destruction of every human vessel, every colony, every outpost. Thexer's secondary brain, the organ that allowed Velerans to process complex calculations instantly, worked through the possibilities. The official records stated that humanity had been completely eradicated. But military officers knew that official records often contained comfortable lies. "Send scout ships to investigate," Thexer ordered, "and increase patrols along the dead zones. If something is out there, I want to know about it." Back aboard the Prometheus, Alina gathered her senior staff in the war room. The holographic table displayed a three-dimensional map of known space, with Velaran territories marked in purple and the few remaining neutral zones in gray. "Our ancestors left us more than just survival protocols," Alina began, gesturing to the map. "They left us a plan. For 100 years, we've prepared. We've developed technology the Velerans can't imagine. We've grown stronger, not just in numbers but in purpose." Commander Sarah O'Brien, head of military operations, stepped forward. Her red hair was pulled back in a severe bun, and her green eyes held the hardness of someone who had spent their life preparing for war. "Our stealth ships are already in position. The Velerans won't detect them until we want them to." "Good," Alina nodded. "But remember, we're not here for revenge. We're here for justice. The Velerans need to understand what they did wrong. They need to face the truth." "With respect, Captain," interrupted Chief Engineer James Thompson, his Scottish accent thick with emotion. "They tried to wipe us out. They celebrated our extinction. Why should we show them mercy?" Alina's expression softened. She understood the anger, the desire for vengeance that burned in many human hearts. But she also understood the burden of leadership, the weight of species survival. "Because we're human," she said simply, "and humans don't just survive. We evolve. We learn. We become better than our enemies thought possible." The room fell silent as her words sank in. Then, one by one, her officers nodded. They had trained for this moment their entire lives, but now that it was here, the reality was overwhelming. "Dr. Singh, begin the activation sequence for Project Echo," Alina ordered. "It's time the galaxy learned that humanity doesn't die easily." As the Prometheus powered up its revolutionary systems, strange things began happening across Velaran space. On the colony world of HFY, seismic sensors detected rhythmic pulses deep underground. On the industrial moon of Torva, manufacturing plants experienced power fluctuations that followed an oddly familiar pattern. And in the capital city of Velora Prime, ancient monuments began to vibrate with a frequency that made Velaran feathers stand on end. Admiral Kelthis was in his private chambers when the first reports arrived. His celebration speech still echoed in his mind, but now those words tasted bitter. The anomalies were spreading, and they all shared one disturbing characteristic. They followed patterns found in captured human technology. "It's impossible," he muttered, his wings twitching nervously. "We destroyed them all." The Senate confirmed it. The archives documented it. But deep in his core, Kelthis felt the cold touch of doubt. What if they had been wrong? What if humanity's greatest strength, their ability to adapt and survive, had been underestimated? As night fell on Velora Prime, citizens began reporting strange dreams. Visions of bipedal figures walking among the stars. Whispers in an alien language that somehow felt familiar. And always, the sensation of being watched by eyes that held neither forgiveness nor forgetfulness. In the depths of space, the Ark Prometheus completed its final preparations. 300,000 humans stood ready, their hearts beating in unison with the ship's massive engines. They were the children of catastrophe, the inheritors of loss, but also the carriers of hope. Alina Vasquez took her captain's chair, feeling the weight of generations on her shoulders. In 6 hours, humanity would announce its return. The galaxy would learn that extinction was not the end of the story. It was merely the beginning of a new chapter. "All stations, this is the captain." Alina's voice carried through every deck of the massive ship. "Prepare for emergence. Let's remind the galaxy why humanity refuses to go quietly into the night." As the countdown began, The Prometheus hummed with barely contained power. The gravitational resonators charge, ready to send a message that would shake the foundations of Valoran certainty. In the darkness between stars, humanity prepared to step back into the light. Humanity's reckoning. The first tremor hit Valora Prime exactly at dawn. It wasn't destructive. No buildings fell, no lives were lost, but every Valoran felt it in their bones. The vibration resonated at a frequency that bypassed their natural defenses, reaching into the primal core of their being. For a species that prided itself on complete environmental control, the sensation was deeply unsettling. Admiral Thexer stood in the Strategic Command Center, watching as reports flooded in from across the collective. Every world, every moon, every space station was experiencing the same phenomenon. His feathers lay flat against his body, a sign of extreme stress that his subordinates pretended not to notice. Analysis complete, Admiral, reported the lead scientist, her voice trembling. The tremors are artificial. They're being generated by graviton manipulation technology far beyond anything in our databases. Except, Thexer said slowly, in the theoretical work we captured from human scientists before the purification. The room fell silent. No one wanted to voice what they were all thinking. The humans had been working on gravitational resonance technology when the decision was made to eliminate them. It had been deemed too dangerous, too unpredictable. The collective had classified the research and buried it in the deepest archives. "Sir," a communication officer interrupted, "we're receiving a broad-spectrum transmission. It's using human encoding protocols." Thexer's secondary brain processed the implications instantly, put it through the universal translator. Full security protocols. The main screen flickered to life, and for the first time in a century, a human face appeared in Valoran command. Captain Elena Vasquez looked directly into the camera, her expression calm but determined. Behind her, the bridge of the Prometheus was visible, filled with human crew members working at advanced stations. To the Valoran collective, and all who received this message, Elena began, her voice carrying the weight of history. "I am Captain Elena Vasquez of the Ark ship Prometheus. On behalf of the surviving human population, I bring you a simple message. We remember." Gasps echoed through the command center. Several younger officers who had never seen a living human stepped back involuntarily. Thexer forced himself to remain still, even as his instincts screamed danger. Elena continued, 100 years ago, your people decided that humanity was too dangerous to exist. You hunted us across the stars, destroyed our colonies, and celebrated our extinction. But you failed to understand the most basic truth about our species. We are survivors. The transmission expanded to show the full scale of the Prometheus. It was massive, easily dwarfing any Valoran capital ship. But more concerning were the energy readings emanating from its hull, patterns that Valoran scientists had deemed theoretically possible but practically unachievable. For a century, we have lived in exile. Elena's voice hardened. We watched from the shadows as you built your perfect society on the graves of our worlds. We listened as you taught your children that we were monsters who deserved extinction. And we waited. Thexer activated his command override. "Captain Vasquez, I am Admiral Thexer of the Valoran Defense Force. Your presence here is unexpected." The collective acted to preserve galactic stability. Humanity's aggressive expansion. "Stop," Elena interrupted, her eyes flashing. "We've heard your justifications, we've studied your propaganda. But we also know the truth. You feared us because we wouldn't submit to your collective, because we insisted on our independence, because we dared to say no to your vision of unity." The tremors intensified, and across the collective, panic began to spread. Citizens who had celebrated just hours ago now huddled in their homes, feeling their worlds shake with each pulse from the human ship. "The gravitational resonance you're experiencing is just a demonstration," Elena explained. "Our scientists perfected the technology your people deemed impossible. We can make your worlds tremble, but we choose not to make them break." That's the difference between humans and what you believed us to be. Admiral Kelthis burst into the command center, his ceremonial robes still fluttering from his rush journey. This is impossible. We confirmed the elimination. Every ship, every colony. You found what we wanted you to find, Elena replied. Decoy vessels, abandoned settlements, while your fleets celebrated their victory. The real human population was already gone, hidden where you'd never think to look, inside the Void Nebula. The revelation struck the Valoran leadership like a physical blow. The Void Nebula was considered a death trap, a region of space so hostile that even their advanced technology couldn't survive there. The idea that humans had not only survived but thrived in such an environment was incomprehensible. "What do you want?" Thexar asked, his tactical mind already calculating scenarios. The human ship was powerful, but it was still just one vessel against the entire collective fleet. Elena leaned forward, and for the first time, a smile touched her lips. "We want the truth. We want the collective to acknowledge what really happened. Not the sanitized version in your archives, but the reality that you committed genocide out of fear." "And if we refuse?" Kelthis demanded, his pride overcoming his fear. The smile faded from Elena's face. "Then the tremors continue. Your people will live with the constant reminder that we exist, that we remember, and that we have the power to shake the very foundations of your worlds. You'll never know peace again." She paused, letting the weight of her words settle. "But we offer an alternative. Acknowledge the truth. Open your archives. Let your people learn what really happened. And in return, we'll share the technology we've developed, innovations that could benefit all species, not just humanity." The command center erupted in heated debate. Some officers called for immediate military action, while others counseled caution. Thexar found himself torn between his duty to protect the collective and his growing realization that they faced something unprecedented. "You ask us to rewrite our history," Thexar said finally, "to admit to our citizens that we were wrong. The social upheaval alone would be less destructive than living under constant fear," Elena countered. "We've had a century to plan this moment, Admiral. We could have returned with weapons of devastation. Instead, we chose to return with truth." Behind Elena, the human crew worked with quiet efficiency. Thexar noted their youth. Most appeared to be in their 20s or 30s. These were humans who had never known Earth, who had been born and raised in exile. Yet they carried themselves with a dignity that spoke of unbroken heritage. "We need time to consider your proposal," Kelthis said, his political instincts taking over. "The Senate must be consulted." "You have 24 hours, Elena interrupted. "The tremors will continue as a reminder of our presence. But understand this, we're not the humans your ancestors feared. We're something new, something forged in the crucible of near extinction. We survived your worst, and we emerged stronger." The transmission shifted to show a view of the Prometheus's interior. Hundreds of thousands of humans were visible, living in a city-sized ship that defied Valoran understanding. Children played in vast hydroponic gardens. Scientists worked in laboratories filled with incomprehensible technology. Artists created works that blended human tradition with a century of isolation. "We call ourselves the Phoenix Generation," Elena said softly. "Born from the ashes of your destruction. We carry the memory of Earth, but we're not bound by its limitations. We've had a century to ask ourselves what kind of species we want to be. The answer might surprise you." As the transmission ended, the Valoran leadership faced a crisis unlike any in their history. The humans hadn't returned as conquerors or destroyers. They had returned as something far more challenging, a mirror that reflected the collective's own actions back at them. Throughout the night, the tremors continued. Citizens across the collective couldn't sleep, couldn't work, couldn't think clearly. The constant reminder of humanity's presence worked its way into their consciousness, raising questions that had been buried for a century. In schools, young Valorans asked their teachers why the humans had been destroyed. In homes, parents struggled to explain celebrations that now seemed hollow. In government buildings, officials scrambled to access classified archives, only to find that many records had been sealed beyond their clearance. As the 24-hour deadline approached, Admiral Thexer found himself standing before the collective Senate. The choice before them was stark: maintain their version of history and live with humanity's persistent reminder, or embrace a painful truth and possibly forge a new path forward. The humans have changed, Thexer reported to the assembly. They're not the aggressive expansionists our predecessors feared. They've evolved, adapted. They offer us a choice between comfortable lies and uncomfortable truths. Senator Krevak, one of the few old enough to remember the purification, spoke up. And what if this is a deception? What if they seek revenge? Then they've chosen a strange method, Thexer replied. They could have attacked when we were unprepared. Instead, they announced their presence and offered negotiation. That alone suggests they've transcended what we thought we knew about human nature. As the Senate debated, the tremors pulsed through their chamber like a heartbeat, steady, undeniable, impossible to ignore. The rhythm seemed to ask a simple question: what kind of civilization do you want to be? 24 hours after first contact, Admiral Thexer stood before the transmission array. The entire collective watched as he prepared to deliver their response to humanity's ultimatum. The tremors had not ceased, and their society teetered on the edge of fundamental change. Captain Vasquez, Thexer began, his voice carrying across space to the human ship. The Valoran collective has reached a decision. We accept your terms. The archives will be opened. The truth will be revealed. Our people will learn the complete history of what transpired between our species. On the screen, Elena Vasquez nodded solemnly. And in return, humanity will share the discoveries we've made in our century of exile. Perhaps together, we can build something better than either of our species achieved alone. As the formal negotiations began, the tremors slowly faded. Across the collective, citizens emerged from their homes to witness something unprecedented. Humans and Valorans working side by side, not as conquerors and conquered, but as equals seeking understanding. The Phoenix generation had returned not with fire and destruction, but with wisdom born from survival. They had turned their greatest tragedy into their greatest strength, transforming from a species marked for extinction into one that could shake the very foundations of galactic civilization. In the years that followed, the truth emerged slowly, painfully. The collective learned that their ancestors' fear had driven them to commit an atrocity. But they also learned that humanity's response had been to become something greater than their enemies could have imagined. The galaxy would never be the same. The comfortable certainties were gone, replaced by difficult questions and complex truths. But in that discomfort lay the seeds of genuine progress, of a future where differences were celebrated rather than feared. As Captain Elena Vasquez would later write in her memoirs, we returned not as the humans they tried to destroy, but as the humans they forced us to become. In trying to eliminate us, they created their greatest teachers. The tremors that shook their worlds were not threats of destruction. They were the birth pangs of a new understanding. The Phoenix had risen, and the galaxy would never forget the sound of its wings.